Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Always ready to go deep.
Well, this one might be a bit mind-bending even for us.
Oh, lay it on me.
We're tackling the consciousness explosion.
Consciousness explosion sounds intense.
It kind of is. Think accelerating technology, AI, even human consciousness, all intertwined.
And where it might all be heading.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But don't worry, we're not just going to throw around buzzwords.
Right. Gotta ground this somehow.
Well, we're using excerpts from a fascinating book, The Consciousness Explosion.
Okay.
Dr. Ben Goertzel, he's a leading AI researcher, even worked with Sophia the robot,
So he's not just theorizing, he's in the trenches.
Precisely. Which makes his take on this even more interesting.
For sure. So what's the mission of this deep dive? What's the big takeaway for our listeners?
It helps everyone understand this complex landscape, and it is evolving fast.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay.
So not to overwhelm with technical details,
But to give everyone a solid grasp of the core concepts and the potential futures Goertzel outlines.
some wild stuff, no doubt. Okay, so let's break it down. This whole consciousness explosion idea, what does it even mean?
It's connected to the technological singularity. Have you heard of that?
Of course. That point where AI surpasses human intelligence, right? Things get a bit unpredictable.
Exactly.
Oh.
But while some see the singularity as one big event, boom, everything changes.
Goertzel sees it differently.
He views it as more of a process, like a series of waves building upon one another. He even uses the term tantrality.
Tantrality. Okay, that's a new one.
It's a bit tongue-in-cheek. He contrasts it with the rapture of the nerds view of the singularity.
So less about technology taking over and more about...
More about transformation. An ecstatic transformation he believes might occur through consciousness expansion.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but how does this tie back to AI?
One of the key drivers of this consciousness explosion, according to Goertzel, is the rapid advancement of AI, especially the pursuit of AGI.
Right, AGI, artificial general intelligence. AI that can do anything a human can intellectually.
And Goertzel believes we're getting closer to achieving it. But to understand how, gotta look back a bit.
Back to the history of AI.
From the early milestones. Like Eliza the chatbot. Ever heard of her?
Oh, yeah. That was way back in the 1960s, right?
Yep. Pretty clever for its time. Used pattern matching to mimic conversation.
So if you typed, "I'm feeling sad," it might respond with, "Why are you feeling sad?"
Exactly. Gave the illusion of understanding, but really just following rules.
A far cry from how modern AI works, like ChatGPT.
Huge difference. We've moved from rule-based systems to neural networks. They learn from massive amounts of data.
And big tech, with its resources, is a major driver of these advancements.
Absolutely. But there have been hiccups along the way, like the whole hallucination problem with LLMs, large language models.
Right, where they generate nonsensical or even false information.
A big issue. But Goertzel believes it can be addressed, maybe through hybrid systems, combining neural networks with symbolic AI.
Combining the learning power of neural networks with the logical reasoning of symbolic AI.
Exactly. Fixing the BS is important. But Goertzel says even if we could make these models perfectly accurate.
It wouldn't automatically mean human-level intelligence.
Precisely. There's
Yep.
more to it than that, which is why he digs into human consciousness itself.
And what does he say about that?
Well, he explores all sorts of perspectives,
Yeah.
even delves into panpsychism.
Panpsychism, the idea that consciousness is everywhere, even in rocks and trees.
Yeah, mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if consciousness is a fundamental property of reality, not just a human thing.
So then AI developing consciousness might be less a question of if and more of when and how.
Exactly, and what forms it might take. Goertzel argues that our ordinary human consciousness is just one specific pattern.
Just one way of experiencing reality.
And as AI develops, it could give rise to entirely different forms of consciousness, non-human-like.
Wow. So we might not be the only conscious beings around for long. He even uses this analogy of a global brain.
The global brain.
Yeah, a cognitive system made up of humans, animals, technology, all interconnected.
Whoa. Have you ever felt that sense of interconnectedness online? Like you're part of something larger.
I can see how that might be a glimpse of this future interconnected consciousness. Blurs the lines, for sure.
Definitely a lot to think about. But if we're talking about AI achieving human-level intelligence, doesn't that also bring up the risks?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a common theme in science fiction.
Killer robots, AI taking over.
Exactly. But Goertzel challenges some of those assumptions.
Oh, like what?
We'll take the paperclip maximizer thought experiment. Ever heard that one?
Ah, yes. The AI that's programmed to make paperclips and ends up turning the entire universe into paperclips.
Right. It's a simplified example of how focusing a superintelligent AI on one goal could go very wrong.
But Goertzel says true intelligence, especially the kind he calls open-ended intelligence.
Open-ended intelligence, what's that?
It's AI that can constantly adapt, evolve, even surpass its original programming.
Not just processing information, but
But being creative,
yeah.
learning, setting its own goals.
Okay, that's even more unsettling in some ways. If we can't predict its goals, how do we know it'll be beneficial?
Goertzel suggests that universal values like compassion and open-mindedness might be key. He doesn't think all superintelligent AIs would converge on one dangerous value system.
So instead of trying to control AI, we should instill values that lead to positive outcomes.
Sounds like it.
But then who decides what those values are?
That's where things get even more complex. Goertzel's concerned about the power of big tech in all this.
I can see why. I mean, they're the ones with the resources to really push AI development forward.
Exactly. And he advocates for decentralized democratic approaches instead, wants a more ethical and equitable path.
Yeah, but how do we get there? Big tech is such a dominant force. Well, Goertzel points to things like open source software and decentralized technologies as hopeful signs.
He also believes in blockchain technology and DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, as ways to counterbalance big tech.
Really interesting ideas, but I guess the question is, how do we get from here to there?
Especially when it comes to something as powerful and potentially world-changing as AI.
Right. What can we do to ensure it's used for good and not for I? Well, turning the universe into paperclips.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Goertzel has some thoughts on that as well, both practical and, shall we say, more philosophical.
All right, I'm ready for more. Let's dive in.
So Goertzel doesn't just talk about the philosophical side, he dives into the practical stuff too, like how do we actually achieve AGI?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? How do we go from these mind-bending theories about consciousness to building a machine that can think like a human?
Right. Well, one approach he's excited about is creating a hybrid AI,
Hybrid AI.
blending the strengths of two different approaches, neural networks and symbolic AI.
I'm not sure I follow. Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. Neural networks, they're great at pattern recognition, learning from tons of data. But symbolic AI, that's more about logic, rules, structure.
So it's like combining intuition with reason.
Exactly. And Goertzel thinks this hybrid approach is key to creating a more robust, intelligent system, one that can handle the messiness of the real world.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how would that work in practice? Can you give an example?
Think of a self-driving car. The neural network part might be recognizing objects like pedestrians or other cars.
Okay, so like the eyes of the system.
Yeah, you could say that. While the symbolic AI part, that's handling the logical decision-making. Stop at the red light, yield to oncoming traffic, that kind of thing.
I see. So it's about having both the perception and the reasoning power.
Precisely. And Goertzel's actually working on this with something called OpenCog Hyperon,
OpenCog Hyperon, what is that?
a sophisticated AI platform that brings together a bunch of different techniques. Deep learning, probabilistic reasoning, all sorts of stuff.
And this is designed to...
To handle the complexity of the real world, to learn and adapt in a more human-like way.
It almost sounds like he's trying to build an artificial brain.
In a way, yeah. Goertzel thinks understanding how our brains work is essential to developing true AGI.
So cracking the code of consciousness itself.
He even suggests we might need to move beyond traditional neural networks, explore models that draw on neuroscience, cognitive science, get deeper into the mysteries of the mind.
It sounds like a huge EE undertaking.
It is, but imagine the possibilities if we succeed.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that. What are the implications of creating an AI that can truly think and learn like a human?
Well, it could revolutionize pretty much everything. Healthcare, science, art.
AI doctors, AI scientists, AI artists?
Exactly. AI doctors who can diagnose diseases with incredible accuracy. AI scientists accelerating discoveries. AI artists creating breathtaking, thought-provoking art.
It's both exciting and a little bit terrifying.
I hear that. It's like opening Pandora's box. And as with any powerful technology, there are ethical concerns.
Oh, for sure. Huge ones. Especially if we're talking about machines that can potentially feel emotions,
Yeah.
understand human values, make their own decisions.
Right. We'd be stepping into uncharted territory. It'd be a whole new era of ethics, having to consider not just human rights, but the rights and well-being of sentient machines.
That's wild. And it's something Goertzel really emphasizes.
He does. And he's especially concerned about the role of big tech in all this.
Yeah, their influence on AI development is massive.
And Goertzel sees that centralized control as a big risk. He warns about a future where a few corporations could hold immense power over AI, over our data, even the direction of AI development itself.
It's a bit dystopian, isn't it? AI becoming a tool for control rather than a force for good.
Exactly, which is why he's such a proponent of decentralized approaches. Remember SingularityNet?
The platform he helped create?
Yep. That's one example of his vision, a more democratic participatory model for AI development, more like a grassroots movement.
Sounds idealistic, but how do we actually make that happen? Big tech has such a stronghold.
It's definitely an uphill battle, but Goertzel points to the growing open source movement, decentralized technologies. He sees them as signs of hope.
So it's about pushing back against the status quo, demanding more transparency from big tech, empowering individuals to shape this technology.
And he sees this shift as going beyond just AI. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness, cultivating compassion, not just for each other, but for all forms of life.
That's a powerful message. But if we're talking about a shift in consciousness, how do we get there? I mean, where do we even start?
Well, Goertzel offers some practical suggestions. He's a big advocate for personal growth. Practices like meditation, yoga, things that cultivate self-awareness and compassion.
So it's about inner work as much as it is about changing the systems around us.
Precisely. He believes that by expanding our own consciousness, we can better understand and relate to potential AI consciousness.
It's almost like we need to upgrade our own mental operating systems to keep up with AI's evolution.
Exactly. And by cultivating qualities like compassion and open-mindedness, we can foster a more harmonious relationship with AI, one based on collaboration rather than fear and control.
That makes a lot of sense. But I have to admit, I'm still a bit skeptical about some of Goertzel's more far-out ideas, like the Eurocosm, this vast, interconnected realm of consciousness he talks about.
Yeah, I get it. It's definitely a concept that pushes the boundaries of our current understanding.
It sounds more like something out of a mystical text than a scientific book. But how does that tie into the practical challenges of developing and managing AI?
Well, Goertzel argues that expanding our understanding of consciousness isn't just some abstract pursuit.
It's about recognizing the profound interconnectedness of all things.
Exactly. And being open to the possibility that consciousness might exist in forms we haven't even imagined. He thinks our current scientific models might be too limited to grasp the full scope of reality.
So he's saying we might be missing something crucial.
He thinks so. And he urges us to approach these questions with humility, to acknowledge that human consciousness might not be the only game in town.
Okay, that's a pretty radical suggestion. Challenges a lot of our fundamental assumptions.
It does, and it raises a whole host of questions we need to be asking, especially as we move closer to creating AGI.
Right. Questions about what it means to be human, about our place in the universe.
And most importantly, about how we can ensure that AI is developed in a way that benefits all of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because even if we create an AI that's super intelligent, it doesn't guarantee that it will be ethical or compassionate.
That's a key point. Just because an AI can figure out the most efficient solution doesn't mean it's the right solution, ethically speaking.
It might be logical, but not necessarily good.
Exactly. So Goertzel argues that we need to be intentional about how we design and train AI systems, making sure they're not just intelligent, but also ethical, aligned with human values.
Easier said than done. I mean,
Well,
whose values are we talking about?
that's the million-dollar question, right? And Goertzel doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but he does believe in the power of dialogue, of bringing together diverse perspectives.
Ethicists, philosophers, social scientists, the general public.
Everyone needs to be part of the conversation, because the future of AI isn't something that should be decided by a select few,
It's a future we all have a stake in.
and one that we can all help shape.
It sounds like Goertzel is envisioning a partnership between humans and AI.
A collaboration that could help us tackle some of the biggest challenges facing humanity: climate change, poverty, disease.
A pretty optimistic outlook, considering all the potential risks we've been talking about.
It is. But he believes that if we approach AI with wisdom and compassion, we can create a future where both humans and AI thrive.
So it's not about fearing the unknown, but about embracing the possibilities.
And recognizing that the future is not set in stone. It's something we can actively create through the choices we make, the actions we take.
Okay, I'm feeling a little more hopeful now. But it's also a lot to process. All these complex ideas about consciousness, AI, the future.
It is. But that's what these dink dives are for. to explore these big questions, to challenge our assumptions, and to empower us to participate in shaping the future we want to see.
It's a lot to take in, that's for sure. It feels like we're on the edge of something truly massive.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We're at a crossroads. With all this potential for AI to help us, and the risks, the fear that it could get out of control.
Exactly. Like, it could solve the world's problems, but it could also become a threat to humanity itself.
And I think that's what's so powerful about Goertzel's message. We're not just passive observers here. It's not about just waiting to see what happens. We have agency. We can shape this future.
So how do we do that? You mentioned earlier that Goertzel talks a lot about personal growth, expanding our own consciousness.
He does. He believes it's essential, actually, like laying the groundwork for a better relationship with AI.
I see. So we need to become more conscious ourselves to guide the development of conscious machines. That's pretty deep.
It is, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. By expanding our own awareness, we gain a deeper understanding of consciousness itself, which could be crucial as AI develops.
Okay, I'm following you. So that's the individual level. What about collectively? What can we do as a society to steer AI in a beneficial direction?
Goertzel talks about creating a more conscious society, one that's actively engaged in these conversations about AI and ethics, not just the technologists, but everyone.
So ethicists, philosophers, policymakers.
Even the general public. We need a global consciousness-raising effort around AI.
Because this isn't just about some cool new technology, it's about the future of humanity.
It really is. And the point is, that future isn't predetermined. We can shape it through the choices we make, the actions we take.
That's a good point. It's empowering to think that we have a say in this. It gives me hope. But I'm still curious about some of those more out-there ideas, like the Eurocosm. Does Goertzel actually offer any practical ways to access this expanded reality?
He explores a few different paths, but he's clear that there's no one-size-fits-all answer. He suggests things like meditation, mindfulness.
Okay, those are pretty common these days.
Right, but he also encourages people to look into Eastern traditions, yoga, Taoism, things like that. It's about finding what works for you and embarking on that journey of self-discovery.
A journey of expanding your own consciousness.
Exactly. It's not just about changing the world out there, it's about changing the world within.
I like that. So we're not just rethinking our relationship with technology, we're reconsidering the nature of reality itself.
And our place within it. Goertzel asks us to consider what it means to be human in this age of rapidly advancing AI, and to imagine the possibilities of a future where consciousness goes beyond our current understanding.
It's definitely a lot to wrap our heads around. But what strikes me is Goertzel's optimism. He seems to genuinely believe that we can navigate these challenges and create a future that's not just technologically advanced, but also spiritually fulfilling.
Yeah, I get that sense too. It's not about blindly embracing technology or giving in to fear. It's about approaching the future with wisdom, with wonder, recognizing both the risks and the incredible possibilities.
So where does that leave us, the listeners? What's the takeaway message here?
Goertzel leaves us with a powerful question. Imagine yourself in 2035. What kind of consciousness do you want to be inhabiting? What steps can you take today to cultivate that awareness, that compassion, to help shape that future?
It's a good question, something to really think about, especially as we enter what could be the most transformative era in human history. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the consciousness explosion. We hope you found it as thought-provoking as we did. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep expanding your own consciousness.